Hey gang, what is going on? Juan here, joined alongside Mr. Well, I can't do your intro, man. So just take over right now and do the thing you do.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Connor, aka Okayfabe, and welcome to an intriguing joint collaboration with myself, yours truly, and we got Juan from the Byte That Wrestling Podcast, the When Worlds Collide, the true When Worlds Collide. This is going to be awesome. So I don't want to take up too much time here, because I know we're going to be talking for probably forever, because we've been wanting to do this for so damn long. But this is also being simulcasted on both of our channels, so you can go, of course, check out, if you're watching this on mine, go check out the Byte That Podcast, go check out their YouTube channel, go check out their website, go check out their everything, because they are awesome people. They're awesome. Why would just go, well, finish this video first.
You're gonna make me cry, man. We're gonna have to stop. We're gonna make me cry. But no, seriously, the same way you said that, right back at you. Okay, Fabe, Connor, you're from Boston, so like, not only do we have Ryan, now we have Connor, and then Keith is still all the way over there in Canada. But that is a podcast that we put out every single Wednesday, so it's really nice to be able to collaborate, have this experience between you and I. And what a show to really kick things off. Originally, we were going to do a collab video about sort of taking a look at the roster, but then I realized, the show's going to happen. We're going to have TakeOver to talk about, so why not just take advantage of that opportunity? And even though there were only 5 matches, each of those matches really told an excellent story, in my opinion. So I want to kind of just get your overall impressions. I think that NXT has had this transitional phase for quite a while, that people were saying, like, NXT is not what it was. I think that this show, man, really showed you that this is the new face of NXT in the best way possible, that it's not like Finn Balor's gone, Nakamura's gone. You know what? It's fine that they moved on up, because all these guys are getting in a really good shot, right?
Yeah, I think, honestly, for me, I was kind of getting worried around NXT Takeover San Antonio, the one with the Rumble, because that one you kind of felt like, oh man, you're really feeling like the effect of, because like Joe had left at that, well, Joe left right after at that point. You had a lot of the top guys, and even Nakamura was only around for one more takeover. Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I just started reviewing NXT weekly. Like, I actually started doing I was only watching the takeover shows. But the weekly shows made me kind of appreciate, in some regards, the takeovers a little bit more in certain build. And but yeah, there was definitely a transitional phase where you felt like there wasn't enough star power, and I was worried that WWE wasn't going to do not a good job, but they were fighting the hands of time, and that the fact they had so many talent. I mean, the last year, you look at how much talent came from NXT. I mean, they just like completely took a whole chunk of core talent,
especially in the women's division.
Yeah, I mean, you take pretty much the entire 4 horsewomen in 6 months or so, give or take. I mean, maybe even more than that. But I mean, right now Asuka's the only one carrying it. But we'll get to that, I'm sure, when we get to the women's matchup. But I mean, it was concerning. But I think that, and then we were just saying this before we got on, this video. This to me was one of the better overall takeovers they've done. Probably, I think Toronto was a good, solid one, I think, last time. Not to take anything away from the matches. I'm talking, overall from beginning to end. This was definitely one of my more favorite recent NXT takeovers for sure.
Yeah, same thing, man. I think that I was there live for the takeover during Orlando, and it was a good show. It was a good show. I had a really good experience, but it still didn't have that magic. Even though I was there live, I was able to see those chants, It didn't have that same magic that when Sasha, Bayley, all these people coming up, But now I got that spark, especially right there at the end. I almost want to jump to the conclusion, but we got to go step by step.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's tough. I was at the Dallas one, so I understand completely what you're talking about in terms of that atmosphere and the environment. But I mean, Chicago is that one of those cities. It's
one of a
quite
kind.
The North. It really is, and they're a very vocal, passionate crowd. As usually, I find the middle and the country, and then also heading into the Northeast near us, it just in general is very, very passionate. We'll just say passionate. That's a nice neutral phrase right there. But yeah, it was a show that definitely blew my expectations away, even for takeovers. That's for sure.
So getting to the first match, I think that this is actually very smart. How they started out with maybe, I guess, the most neutral one, the softest match of all of them, which was Eric Young versus Roderick Strong. Eric Young, of course, representing Sanity. Then Roderick Strong, he doesn't really have much of a character. He got this video package about a month ago, which I really liked, because he was basically the Ring of Honor guy. His whole character was, well, you like me elsewhere, so I guess I'm here. And a lot of the guys in NXT recently had that type of character, so it was really nice to see him break out of that shell and develop some of that personality. I enjoyed that. You know, he didn't just come out. He knew that Sanity was, well, Sanity. They were going to do a lot of interference, so, you know, he came out through the crowd, quickly took them out, and then he looked like a star. Like, just jumping right to the conclusion, I think that Roderick Strong looked like a star, acted like a star. You know, he was called the Messiah, the backbreaker in Ring of Honor for a reason. I love that finishing maneuver that he has. It's basically a Falcon's Arrow backbreaker, but just the way that he did it, he almost threw Eric Young to the outside. He was so damn good at that, right?
The whole thing was I thought was very well done. This was probably out of the 5 matches on TakeOver the weakest built, in my opinion, because they only built it up really for 2 weeks, and even that was just kind of like Sanity attacked Eric Young, Sanity attacked Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong wants revenge because they mentioned his family. Grr. I mean, granted, I was kind of a little like at first as far as the build goes, but sometimes the most simplistic booking, I am a big fan of simple booking. If you have something simple, straightforward, easy to understand, it can deliver in multiple ways. One of the things I really liked about this was the fact that Roderick Strong took out Sanity before the match started. They never seen that before, where Young was like ready to go outside, and then he just takes out Alexander Wolf and Dillian Kane right outside, and just bam, 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 and then the crowd already just going nuts. I knew Strong was going to get a strong reaction from Chicago, no pun intended, because of his, like we said, his history with Ring of Honor. He has obviously a loyal fan base and following. Like yeah, those vignettes too. I completely agree with you. Apparently they were saying that they did a lot of. He did get a lot of positive reception at house shows, that he was getting a lot of big fan reaction. And honestly, and obviously with him winning, I think was a bigger affirmation of they have big plans for him. I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, if not into maybe NXT TakeOver New Orleans, which is the one for WrestleMania 34, he's either going to be close to contending for or NXT champion, one of the three.
I agree. I think that given the outcome of I almost said main event match, because you're used to the NXT Championship match being the main event, but the match between Bobby Roode and Itami, they can totally have this lengthy thing where Roderick Strong sort of climbs up the ladder, takes out a lot of these, just evil villains in NXT, and eventually takes out the biggest villain of them all. He's got that clean-cut look that I think he's likable. He can be that babyface, that modern-day babyface that doesn't actually get booed, right? Because I think that's the biggest challenge, where unless you twist him a little bit, unless you have some of that edge, people just turn on you because you're not clean-cut. But then on the other side of the fence, I think Sanity's in a really tough situation, because I want to talk to this with you about the roster thing, where Sanity is a crazy group of people, but they're losing. They're not really taking over the show. So at some point, what is your purpose? And I think that it's understandable that Roderick Strong won, but where does that leave Sanity, right?
Well, that's a simple revenge storyline. They could do that easy because, and they even played this up on commentary, which I thought was very clever. No one's really had take Ty Dillinger out of the equation, because Ty used that as a springboard to go to the main roster. And kind of funny that you mentioned about like Sanity's role and everything. I honestly thought that we were going to see Ty Dillinger be that role that Roderick Strong's in now, in terms of being the one to beat Sanity and then springboard into, because I mean, you hear it now, he's super over. I mean, you even heard the 10 chants during tonight. He wasn't even on the show. But the point being is, I think Sanity's role is to prepare the next big babyface that they want to groom to become the next top NXT star, at least, for future planning. I think the fact that he beat Sanity this early is a huge storytelling factor, because again, short-term build, there wasn't really a whole lot of build behind it. They've been putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into these vignettes, so you're having that emotional investment to him, and I guarantee you they're going to jump strong. If not, well, probably not this week, but probably the next couple of weeks after. I'm expecting the Strong Sanity storyline to go well into NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3, which is a weird sequel to say, right? But yeah, I know it's weird. It's like saying the movie sequels always make me cringe whenever I think of them,
especially the third ones.
Yeah, Godfather 3 just comes to mind. Anyway, but I could definitely see this being long term, because they played this up to on commentary when they said Strong Strong's beating Sanity. No one's ever really done that before. There we go. What a huge shocker. Like, you could see the reaction on Young's face and Sanity's face. So I think their role is to eventually prepare Strong for an eventual top spot in NXT. No doubt about it.
And if anything, this really helps with Eric Young sort of become more insane, right? Like, I got to make myself more irrelevant than ever because I just suffered this loss, so maybe I do all sorts of crazy things in between. And yeah, ultimately, I think it's a really good thing that Roderick Strong got that victory. Now, match number 2. Holy crap. This match was incredible. We're talking about NXT's UK Showcase match, which was Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne, where Pete Dunne walked out as the brand new, the second ever champion. And I know you're a father, so like, I feel old because they are 20 years old and 23. I was like, I shouldn't even bring that up, but I just did because these two guys.
Thanks.
You're welcome, man. But these two guys should not even be half as talented as they are because they had that crowd, the Chicago crowd, okay? This is not your average wrestling crowd. They had the Chicago crowd in the palm of their hands. They knew exactly how to get the spots that they needed to do going. If you think about this match, this wasn't a high-flying showcase. If anything, the reason that Tyler Bate lost was because at the end, he's like, no, man, I got to do the high-flying stuff and that costume, which was dangerous, right? Like that dive and then just face first almost. It was an exceptional match. How did you think this being inserted into NXT elevated it, considering it's part of a UK show, not necessarily NXT itself?
It was smart to do this. I knew this was going to eventually happen because they have been showcasing the UK talent in NXT local shows. They did it at WrestleMania weekend, which I'm sure you guys probably had a chance to experience as well. It's smart because they're building another brand. They're building another division of WWE. So in order for them to properly elevate it, why not do it on one of a bigger platform? Maybe not necessarily the main roster, but I think NXT TakeOver and NXT in general is it's just smart. It's a smart business move. They definitely hyped it up between the UK special they had last night, where Dunne became the #1 contender. So there's some relevance to it. Building it up and putting it on that platform is just smart across the board. It creates new intrigue, new interest, possibly in people who may not have wanted to tune in. Because you have to understand that there's different dynamics, different audiences, and different core groups. You might have fans that are, Triple H has said this before. He knows who he's catering to with NXT. He's basically catering to the die-hard loyal fans, the hardcore fans like us. Maybe they may not be interested in the UK stuff, but after seeing this, you better damn well be interested in it. Absolutely. And it's just a win-win across the board. More talent gets exposed, another platform for talent to be exposed upon and get their name out there and showcase their talents. And I don't know what I could possibly say to compliment this match anymore. This is not only match of the night, bar freaking none. This is probably match of the year candidate for the entire company, for both NXT and WWE. The funny thing was, I was actually I knew we were doing this review together, and I was trying to wrap my head about what made it so good. I was trying to get a summary, and God, it was hard to do that. But one thing I noticed they did very, very well in this match is they protected their finishers.
Yes.
And that's something that really was – and they did that throughout the entire evening, don't get me wrong. But there was something that they were doing that they weren't trying to go for the finisher every single time. They were trying to utilize different moves that you may not have seen or signature moves that you may not have seen as frequent, execute those, and then get the crowd emotionally invested behind those. You're right, no high flying. There was no it wasn't crazy high flying action, but the athleticism, I just love Dunne for he reminds me of Fit Finley, like JR said in commentary, which again, JR in commentary, huge +1 on that
and
one. For absolutely bringing him back on the
because it's saying something quick there. You were saying, there's a lot of people that aren't familiarized with the UK crowd. How many people bring up the Attitude Era? When you think about Attitude Era, which voice comes to your head? Good old JR. Now, I know he's involved in the UK show, but it's also yet another incentive to get the casual fan or especially if they play a clip of this during Raw and it's hey, good old JR called this match. Even if you don't check out the rest of TakeOver, that in itself is going to be an incentive. So I thought that was really good.
It was just smart move. I think it's a smart move to incorporate them until they get their own. I'm assuming what they're going for is a weekly show, what they've been saying. So it's smart to capitalize on the NXT momentum and that platform to jettison off of that one. And like I said, I can't justify. I can't do it justice. But for me, the one big thing that I took away from this match was the fact that they protected the finishes very, very well. They were able to. There were a couple of moments where the spots got a little crazy in terms of just countering everything, but at the same time, they had such believability behind them. They had such just great selling. It was just great psychology. Like the grinding into the rib. Like, there were so many different aspects of the match that really impressed the hell out of me, that made me really invested in this matchup, that I really I got myself lost into it. And honestly, usually I take notes when it comes to shows, like copious amount of notes, like ridiculous copious amount of notes. But this one, I just sat back and watched and just enjoyed the entire match. It was just a treat. Like I said, match of the night, match of the night, bar none. Definitely match of the year candidate.
What I will say about it is that it felt legitimate. And NXT already in itself already feels more legitimate than Raw or SmackDown when it comes to like wrestling matches, when it comes to you look at a guy like Pete Dunne. I don't know how Pete Dunne works on Raw or SmackDown. He feels so real. It feels almost like he should be disqualified whenever he like grinds, whenever he does those things, because he doesn't feel mainstream. He's not a superstar. Pete Dunne is not a superstar, should never act like a superstar. He is the bruiserweight, right? You look at a guy like Tyler Bate. He is so crisp. And the one note that I wrote about him is that he manages to somehow be charismatic through his wrestling. And that takes a lot of skill. I've barely heard the guy talk. I honestly don't remember how his voice sounds like. And I don't need to. Like, don't give the guy any promos, because the way that he behaves inside of that ring, from the airplane spin to like the little looks to like, you know, at the end when they were punching each other, the facial expressions told the story. And a lot of times, some wrestlers, even in shoot interviews, you hear them say, well, I never got my time, so my character never got over. Tyler Bate, at 20 years old, has already mastered. This guy, in 10 years, he will still be 8 years younger than AJ Styles currently is right now. Just put that into consideration. Like, WWE has to be looking at this guy like, holy crap, we have a gold mine. Please, for the love of God, don't get injured. We're getting guys like Balor and everybody else is getting injured. Please, please, please just survive for a little while longer.
That's the other way to look at it too, is an investment long term. And that's what I saw when they were touting like Tyler Bate being 19 years old when he became the UK champion. I'm like, yeah, they're investing for the future, hands down. I mean, obviously NXT is the same deal, and 205 Live to some extent, and the cruiserweights, but this is and this to another platform. It's an investment in the future. And if you don't see that like, especially with what they could pull off just tonight, here's another way to think about this. Neither one of those men could legally drink in the States. That's
wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Well said.
That to give you an idea that neither, because Pete Dunne's 20, and actually Tyler Bate is 2 now, but neither one of them can legally drink in the United States of America. Woof.
But they can tear a house down.
But they can tear down the entire crowd of Chicago in front of probably over 15,000 people. But anyway, you're right though. It's funny, you could say the same thing about Pete Dunne in terms of expressions. We really don't hear him cut an interview much. I mean, if we do, it's very short, sweet, and to the point. He does the whole fist thing where he just knocks his knuckle down. He just has that gritty, grimy, I'm going to beat the crap out of you look on his face. And he obviously backs it up. I don't know if you noticed this when they were zooming in on when he was working on the fingers and on the wrist. Like, they actually zoomed in on what he was working on. And they did a very good job with Tyler Bate with Pete Dunne in terms of giving that believability, making you get behind the fact that he's the bruiserweight, and JR and commentary certainly backed it up. I thought it was slow paced at first as far as the commentary goes, but once we got to the halfway point, it was just like absolute full force. They gave them plenty of time. The Chicago crowd ate it up. They were chanting UK, which is awesome. They were over with the Chicago crowd. They're over with the NXT crowd. It's a win across the board for everyone involved. I'm just happy because I predicted Pete Dunne was going to win too. So that's over 2, baby.
You didn't really get in the predictions. I'm quite proud of you, man. I'll say that right now.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to say about this is I hope this eventually leads to NXT and the UK show sort of almost being the alternative to Raw and SmackDown. Where if you don't want 2 shows a week that are maybe more wacky, Roman Reignsy, well, then you got NXT and the UK show. Enjoy.
Roman Reignsy.
They're both shorter than Raw and SmackDown. So that's always a good thing.
Yep. The UK special, I mean, not to get too far off the rail, I did a review of that too, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was only 4 matches, one of them being a 205 live match, and it was a very, smaller than like Full Sail, so it was like a very, very tight knit group. But honestly, and I said this in my review, if we got that presentation on a weekly basis for the UK show, I'm fine with that. It fits the mold of the gritty, rough and tumble kind of style that the UK scene is for. So I mean, it's a win-win across the board in my book.
Yeah, not everything has to be the super clean, super beautiful 50,000 seat arena. A lot of times, smaller the better, and I'm talking about wrestling right now in particular as I move over to the third match, which is the Women's Championship match. Now, this one right here, I really want to talk to you about this because I'm not sure how to feel. So, Asuka, for context, I thought that her run has been great, right? Like, we have somebody that legitimately beat Goldberg's streak in the world of wrestling and looks legitimate. She's plowed through the entire women's roster to the point where it's damn near nobody left to really challenge her. At some point, though, because most of the women got called up, there was this huge lull in the middle where it was just like, okay, Asuka, nobody looks believable to actually defeat you. You're too damn good. That's almost a problem. You're too damn good at what you are. So then Ember Moon was inserted into this. Then she was taken back out because, well, she was, I'm still not sure if it's like a legitimate injury or not. Whatever the case, she was out with an injury, right? Which is what really matters. And then we have Ruby Riott, who just showed up. So it's still a little weird, kind of nice. She's almost the new Becky Lynch, where Becky Lynch showed up almost at the end of that first batch of women, and a lot of people were booing Becky Lynch. People forget about that. It wasn't until one of the takeovers that people really kind of like got to liking her. But she had the terrible character, like the Irish dancer at the beginning. And I think that Ruby Riott still needs to really find herself. And in the ring, she definitely seemed like the least polished one, like that Hurricane Rana, and followed by just a couple things afterwards. That did not feel all that great. And then when you look at Nikki Cross, I think Nikki Cross, she understands her character. The issue is that when it comes to the wrestling part, we got the apron thing, which I like with the elbows, and they got a huge pop from the crowd because she was vicious there, but her intensity is all over the place. So Asuka, to me, in this match, was the only one that came clear of who she is, what she's there for. And ultimately, that conclusion there wasn't that great. I thought that was a little lackluster because you could tell the referee, and, of course, things happen, right? It was out of control maybe for some people. You could tell he was counting very slow because everybody was way out of place. So then we get that kind of weak kick and then conveniently pinning both. I think that gets the obvious message across that unless it's Ember Moon versus Asuka, nothing else is really going to happen. I can't say I care about that is the problem. If I cared about that, then awesome. But there's something missing, man. I need you to help me.
No, I'm kind of on the same boat with you. So there's a couple of things with this match. When I say it, I'm saying this in the nicest way possible. Out of all the matches, this to me was the weakest one. However, to me, half of it was where it was placed on the card. Because you came right after the UK Championship match. And no matter who you were, you had trouble following up that match. Now, that being said, I think as far as what your issue, what you're saying is, and I completely agree with you, is the concern with the overall state of the women's division in NXT. And I've got some unfortunate news that I found out about Ember Moon coming right before the show started. Originally, her injury was only supposed to be for a few weeks. It has now been said that she is going to be out for 6 months.
She's getting the Strowman treatment.
Yeah, she is getting the Strowman. It is not a work, though. It is not a work.
Wow.
It sucks. So I think you're right. I think they were building to Ember Moon being the new face of the women's division, and I think that they have a good depth of women in their division. A couple of weeks ago they did the Battle Royal where they found out the number one contender, and they did the whole thing where Asuka
they had a bunch of people.
Women. Right. They had, I think, 15 women. The problem is that they haven't just had the time to sit down, develop who they are, and get them airtime. That's just timing. Again, it's the fighting the uphill battle of time. So with the triple threat, I think you're right. I think that, honestly, I think Nikki Cross and Ruby Riott, their rivalry is off here. and the women's championship is over here. And it just so happened that everything kind of just melted together. If Ember Moon was healthy and good, and this was the fatal four-way that we originally scheduled, I thought Ember Moon was going to pin Nikki Cross and win the championship, setting up the rematch against Asuka at Brooklyn. That's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. Now, with not only Ember Moon out injured, but injured a long time, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what goes down and who they need to build, basically a new stable, like the Four Horsewomen of NXT. They need to build new stars. And like I said, they have the talent there. They just need to get them out more. And personally for me, Nikki Cross and Ruby Riott are, to me, and obviously they're not the same, but to me they seem like very similar characters. And it's hard for me to differentiate sometimes between obviously Nikki Cross is part of Sanity. She's doing the whole crazy psycho thing. And then Ruby Riott's like the punk rocker chick. But they have, I don't know if it's their styles or the fact that we've just seen them brawling against each other. We haven't really seen like a one-on-one match. I feel like it's like I hate you. I feel like it's a freaking high school fight sometime between like the punk chick and the goth chick sometimes.
Yeah, but when you compare it quickly to the Four Horsewomen, you had Becky Lynch, who was kind of that, right? But then you had Bayley, who was the lovable person that then got upset. Then you had the Boss, and you had Charlotte. But all four were very well defined. Where right now, Asuka is the only one, dare I still say, the only one in the entire women's division that really has that defined personality.
Right. And honestly, this goes back to a problem that I think they did was I think they called up Bayley too soon. I think that they needed to keep Bayley around for at least until WrestleMania 33, where she could help cultivate the next star underneath. So Asuka would be the champion, and then you have like the secondary feud, so that you could utilize her to bring up other new talent that's coming up through the rosters. That's just me. What the hell do I know? But that's pretty much, I think, the match itself wasn't horrible. It was the worst matchup, I think, compared to everything else on the card. But then again, this is one of the better overall takeovers. There was a couple of cool spots. One of them I really liked was Ruby was trying to do like a leg drop off the top rope, and then Asuka like slid back and then grabbed her in the lock. Yeah, the Asuka lock, which I thought was clever. There were a couple of clever spots. The apron spot got a huge pop, which I didn't even expect. So there were pockets here and there that were impressive stuff. The finish, though, I agree. Sometimes a botched finish can ruin a match, unfortunately. But I thought, honestly, this was hands down much better than the fatal four-way in Toronto, where it was Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, and then Nikki Cross. Yeah, I think this was much, much better. So I'm giving it some slack here. And again, I think Ruby Riott needs to come into her own. I agree, she's only very new on the NXT scene as far as being signed a couple of months ago. And like I said, they have the women there. It's just going to take some time.
Luckily, NXT is not going anywhere, so it's all a matter of being patient. And as long as the matches are released solid, eventually we'll get there. It's all a matter of being patient, right? I think a lot of people forget that just 3 months ago, and I included myself in this bunch, we almost stopped caring about NXT, and now we're right back on track. So after this, we got a video package for, I'm pretty sure it's Patrick Clark. I guess he's now called, this name is the Velveteen Dream. I'm hoping that's a nickname.
Dream.
I'm hoping that's just the nickname, man, because that is just a bad name in my opinion. I think that is the Velveteen Dream Patrick Clark. Awesome. The Velveteen Dream, it feels like there needs to be something after that. How do you say Velveteen at WrestleMania or Dream Baby? I can't unthink Dusty Rhodes is the big issue here.
I'm just picturing Dusty Rhodes now in velveteen polka dots, and that's an interesting sight. I think the gimmick, it's going to debut next week, or this Wednesday, I should say. So
we'll find out.
We'll see. For me, and it's funny because I was just on this recent trip, like just thinking about this in general lately, is I feel like half the reason people get over. Don't get me wrong, the wrestling is obviously a key component because you have to be able to do what you can do in that 16x16 ring. But honestly, I think a majority of the ability is 75% entrance and character. You can get that over the crowd. My point being, look at Ty Dillinger. He can get a crowd absolutely insanely over for the number 10, and he hasn't even stepped in the ring.
He didn't even
yet.
need to count that high.
Yeah, exactly. 5. To me, it was just like, wow. So if this gets over, I mean, I'm afraid it's going to be Adam Rose 2.0, but if it gets over, hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they got to tread lightly. But as you mentioned, we're going to see it on Wednesday. I saw him at Access at WrestleMania. So if he's the same character, which I'm assuming he will be, it's basically what we had already seen in NXT, which is a little weird. But I got, I don't know if you saw this when it happened in TNA. I got some Orlando Jordan vibes from that video package. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong is all I'll say about that.
As long as he doesn't come out with lotion, I think we're good.
Well, he sprayed something on screen, man, which is why I got that vibe. So I'm going to match number four before Mr. Okayfabe freaks out here. Surprisingly enough, it was the NXT Championship match. So we got Hideo Itami versus Bobby Roode. And we saw Bobby Roode retain. And we actually got a tweet from True Prince, a pro supporter of the show, sort of stating that this was a very similar match to one of the previous ones that Roode had with Nakamura, where Bobby Roode almost played the opposite side of the spectrum. He played the guy that's being injured. Usually it's the bad guy injuring the good guy, but then eventually it was, these are two very injured guys that can barely wrestle each other. Neither of them can hit their finishing maneuvers. So it was, like you mentioned, about protecting the finishing maneuvers because they can't even hit them. So the thing is, if they kick out, they didn't get quite all of it because they were already injured to begin with. So they can't get it with that quite same impact. So I love how with the go to sleep, even though he kicked out of it, you know, Bobby Roode was out of the ring. Hideo Itami had to struggle to get back into the ring. So some people were getting upset on social media. People, through the world of wrestling, if a match ends in 3 seconds and you take 25 seconds to put the guy back into the ring, that is a lifetime. And I thought that this was a good match. I think that overall, there's no way, and I need to clarify this because otherwise this would sound repetitive, no match in this card can outdo match number 2. That's just not possible.
No. This was much better than I thought it was going to be. But you're right. It's and this is no disrespect to anybody else on the talent, but I mean the UK Championship match, nothing's going to touch that. The tag team match had its thing. This had its thing. The women's match had its thing, and Strong and Young had its thing. Nothing's going to top that UK Championship match. That's just, we'll get that right off the bat right here. This matchup was much better than I expected it to be. And going back to the thing, yes, they did exactly that where they protected the finish. And what I liked about it was they did them like first off, I love the opening spot where Roode is about to do the glorious like taunt, and Tommy quickly goes to grab him for the GTS and Roode books it out. I'm very big on little details like that for psychology that make you think like, yeah, that makes sense why he would actually do X, Y, and Z. Again, we were talking about the injuries. You're right. That was the first time in a long time where I've seen a heel injury where the babyface is going after the injury. And I think Roode literally went after the glorious DDT 3 times, and he's like, damn it, my arm. And then just right into that. Again, the GTS and Roode rolls out. It was just psychology-wise, it was probably I'll give it this much. I think psychology-wise, it was the best match.
Agreed.
I think the UK match was fantastic in every sense, but as far as overall in-ring psychology, this one took the cake compared to the other matches in the evening. I was very pleasantly surprised just how good the match was going to be. I knew it was going to be okay, but this superseded my expectations a lot. The crowd was very into it. You know, a crowd could make or break a match sometimes as well too. If the crowd's dead for it, it's not going to happen. But yeah, Roode retaining, which I figured as much. I don't think they're going to take the championship off of Roode anytime soon. I think they're waiting for that big challenger. It's either going to be, like I mentioned before, Strong or Drew McIntyre. I think is going to be one of those two guys that's eventually going to take the championship off of the glorious one.
And what I think was so great about this match is much like the other Bobby Roode matches, and you guys got to give Bobby Roode a lot of credit where he knows what his job is. His job is not to have the indie match. It's not to have the match of the night type thing, you know, like 5-star match or Dave Meltzer. His job is to be the champion, and the champion wins, and the champion overcomes odds. The champion may not have the match of the night, but you will remember something about that match and who he beat. So going a little bit back to Hideo Itami, he's somebody that's, I mean, poor guy. He's outlasted everybody else in the NXT roster simply by being injured, right? Like, he was nowhere involved. We'll never find out who actually attacked him. I love how even today they played the video package about Kevin Owens saying, poor guys. Was it Kevin Owens? Oh, wait. Whoa. Kevin Owens was there live. Oh, my God. I think we just uncovered this. And Sami Zayn was there. What if it was Sami Zayn? Nobody would expect Sami Zayn to have that. No.
It was Pat Patterson.
Oh, my God. It's always Pat Patterson then.
It's always Pat Patterson.
What were we talking about? Match. We were talking about a match. And about this match, I appreciate it once again that Bobby Roode, his job is to be the solid champion. He's Triple H. I think that him and Triple H, it's no coincidence that Triple H is a big supporter of him. When I think about a Triple H match, I always think that it's not really the match of the night, but it was good. I enjoyed it, and he seemed like a powerhouse. And, I mean, he's got the spine buster. He's got the blockbuster. He's incredibly crisp in the ring. He is a really good ring veteran. And I'm not saying Triple H does the blockbuster. I'm just saying that his arsenal of moves is really, really good. So, to conclude this, I love that glorious DDT. At first, I was very disappointed by it. Like, when he first started doing that move as a finishing maneuver, I thought, like, another DDT out of anything. I would have been okay with, like, the perfect plex that he used to do in TNA. Anything better than that pump handle drop he had in his debut match in NXT. But way... I think he defies gravity. We talk about Neville, but the way he picks up that guy, and he gets this weird airtime that it seems like he holds the person up still in the air and drops him. Especially that double one at the end was great.
It's kind of like a half suplex.
Yeah,
that's the way I look. Yeah, and the thing is, and again, this is something that it's a theme of the night. It's just about protecting your finish. I mean, you look back at the old days. Finishers were not as gravitas or as crazy as they are now. Leg drops, frog splashes, Jake Rob, superplex. You know, I mean, Tully Blanchard's was like a suplex that you bounce off of the rope. So simple moves can work. And honestly, I'm a big fan of simple moves that you can do anywhere, anytime on anybody. And that's exactly what this is. That's why I'm a huge fan of the RKO, because it's, again, simple move you can do on anyone, anytime, anybody. And the way he hit the first one and then just rolled into the second one, I'm like, that's got to be it. But at the same time, when he landed again, the psychology was great. He like grabbed his arm and hobbled over and just grabbed it and for the 1, 2, 3. I definitely agree in the similarities of Bobby Roode. I see obviously a little Ric Flair too because of the robe and the gravitas and everything. I mean, you know, that's just right, exactly. Yeah, the whole it's like a melting pot of I see Rick Rude, no pun intended. Triple H and Ric Flair melt into one. Like, he is definitely
that's quite a combination if you really think about it.
It really is, and I think he plays it very, very well. And it's funny because I was thinking about this too. I don't know if Roode will get called up to the main roster. I don't know if he ever will. I mean, think of it this way. Like, we were talking about Hideo Itami, who has just been circumstanced with injuries. Triple H has stated in interviews there are people who will just stay in NXT. And honestly, I wouldn't mind Roode. I mean, he's in his 40s, right? So he's not necessarily the young lion of the company, and I don't think they could use that. I don't know how long he has left in the tank. Maybe that's his role in NXT, and then it's his permanent role in NXT, and I would be completely fine with that. But again, the matchup was, again, overall the best, psychology-wise, I thought the best match of the night, hands down.
And one thing I did want to add is that psychology-wise, I had to question whether Bobby Roode was faking it or not. I'm not sure that was intentional or not. But the injury, it's like, well, of course the bad guy's going to have that. So the referee stops the match, and then he pokes him in the eye, and then the things keep going. But then to actually see him be, no, I'm in actual pain. I am struggling to get my DDT. It adds a human element to the villainous character. You respect him a little bit, so that way maybe he does something next week on NXT to make you hate him and go like, okay, no, you're still the bad guy. You're very much the bad guy.
Right. They kind of did this with the first Nakamura match, except they did with Nakamura versus Roode. But again, little injury, they just go like, fuck, and then bam, they just take him out. And I appreciate the little tiny things in that. It just makes the match to me a little bit better.
Which takes us to our main event. A roller coaster ride. I mean, it wasn't even the match itself that was the roller coaster ride, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And it is the NXT Tag Team Championship match where the Authors of Pain defended against DIY, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. These two guys, I love how that video package was very much real. Like, think about when Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano showed up in NXT. They were jobbers. They were literally feeder talent. They had a couple of matches where they lost very quickly, And then luckily things like the Cruiserweight Classic happened. I remember Tommaso Ciampa, and I guarantee you that match had to make a big impression. He had a really good random match in NXT against Samoa Joe, which, I mean, as somebody that hadn't watched a lot of Tommaso Ciampa, I was thinking to myself, man, I don't know who this guy is, but do something with him. I mean, he can elevate the hell out of other people. I mean, he made a great match from Samoa Joe, and I didn't even know what his character was in NXT. So then they become tag team champions, and they lose tag team championships. They were about to get called up to 205 Live because even video packages aired, and then those video packages never happened. They never showed up, right? Who remembers that? Nobody does. And then they get brought down to NXT in a way where it's just like, no, we're back to the tag team division. And there's a lot of uncertainty of what is to come of these guys. If they become tag team champions again, well, do they just then lose it? Or are they ever going to get called up? We got the questions answered in this match, and that's why I wanted to really build that up, because ultimately this match didn't tell the story of just who won and who lost, but where things are going to play out after this show. So the Authors of Pain, I think they did their role very well. I think they took a backseat. Generally speaking, I think DIY shined a lot more than the Authors of Pain did in this match, although you got to give credit to these guys who are also very young. The Authors of Pain with the power bombs, I think that they just got to move on to like another challengers. I think that I was just a little bit burnt out because we had already seen a lot of great matches, but the spots that we had with Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, the dives, right? I think those are great. Although this was the most apparent use of the wooden ladders. We actually got a couple of tweets about them. I mean, ultimately, anything that makes these guys safer is fine with me. It is just funny how they're, I think if they were a little bit more obvious that they were wood ladders, it would be fine, but they're made to look like metal or aluminum, and then they turn out to be wood. It's like, what is life? I don't know what life is all about. What you think
you hear
about
like
it?
a crunch, like, huh?
Yeah,
wood chips on that thing.
That aluminum it's a little questionable.
I'd get your refund from Home Depot. I'm just saying it's false advertising. But no, the ladder match was great storytelling for numerous reasons. The video packages definitely highlighted that. To your point, I think that going into the match, I was thinking, and I'll get to gloating at the end about my prediction about this, about what's going to happen. But going into that, that's pretty much what I thought. What the hell's next? You really don't have any other tag teams in NXT. DIY went through the hurdles of doing their own thing, becoming a team, epic rivalry with Revival, the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, beating the Revival in multiple matches, and then losing to Authors of Pain, having the triple threat rematch. Like there's boom, 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 and then and then this. And I realistically thought, what would happen if they won the championships? What would happen to Authors of Pain? Authors of Pain had been almost on the same dominating path. They come in, clean house, take out American Alpha. Then we don't see American Alpha again. They go to the main roster. And then they win the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. They win the tag team titles and then dominate over both teams. So to me, it made more sense for DIY to lose, unfortunately. But I'm starting to become a huge Authors of Pain fan. I'm not usually a big fan of super heavyweights. But I thought to your point, I do agree. I think DIY looked much better in this matchup. But then again, I love the meshing of different styles.
Yeah,
as much as I don't like, I'm personally not a huge fan of super heavyweight versus super heavyweight, some exceptions notwithstanding. But when you have like a light heavyweight or cruiserweight against a super heavyweight,
versus Goliath, as WWE likes to say.
Yeah, you get a lot more creativity with it, and the diving off the ladder spot, which scared the absolute ever living hell out of me because I watched that on replay a couple of times, and I thought both of them broke their effing necks from the way they landed.
Especially
on them.
Johnny, because he went down directly, man. Like that was insane.
He scorpion. when your legs come over and hit the back of your head, it's a scorpion. It was just so many crazy spots. It was a great matchup. Nothing bad to say whatsoever about the match. Laughed a little bit about the wooden ladders. Some of the bumps were just, particularly when Authors of Pain just hit Gargano on the chin with the ladder. Holy God, there were some of the spots they do, even if they're not as dangerous as they are in reality, the setup and the perception of them is just spot on. It's insane. Like the kicks and stuff is just crazy. I can't believe Paul Ellering got super kicked.
I felt bad for him.
I did too. I thought he got legitimately kicked, I think, because he went down pretty hard. Like it wasn't a super sell, but it was hard to tell. But anyway, but yeah, it was great storytelling. I love the matchup, the crowd going absolute nuts for thank you DIY, and then of course the ending.
There's technically two endings. They marveled us. They did the Marvel thing with the movies because everybody was waiting for it. It was so obvious. The moment that the camera and the crowd were looking at them in the ring, the clapping. When is it going to happen? It's not going to happen in the ring. Okay, let's go up the ramp. Oh, just wait for it. Wait, no. Wait, they're up on the stage, but then the lower third is going up. So the show ended. And then they're already saying goodbye. They've never done this to my knowledge before. And all of a sudden, grabs his head, bam. And I actually yell out, no. Because at this point, I'm thinking, well, maybe they actually decide. I was already fantasy booking how the next week's NXT would play out. And you, my friend, you called it. So now you officially get to gloat. The floor is yours right now.
So I called actually the entire show. Every prediction I got right, which made me wish I wish Wrestle Rumble, who I work with all the time, I wish I put a pick in for NXT because I would have won awesome prizes. Cheap plug. But I heard some rumblings, and as I mentioned before, oh yes, that thing's like the size of like a huge Honey Nut Comb cereal. Well, I'll take it. I'll take any victory I can. Like I said, going into the matchup, I heard some rumblings that it might be a possibility. And realistically, when you think about it going in the match, yeah. But to be fair, when they did show the lower third, I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, that means they're getting called up to the main roster. That's what I thought. I thought that like, okay, if they're not going to turn, if they're not going to do the angle where they're turning, they're going up to the main roster. And then Ciampa was like that and just threw him right into the barricade, and just the madness. We were actually on like preparing for this video while they were still finishing up the attack. Like the attack took like a good like 10, I think almost 15 minutes. It was a good amount of time that they spent on the attack. I mean, just attacking, putting him through the tables, and like that creepy thing that they kind of did during the CWC where Gargano's on his like lap and he's just like trying to like pet him or say. It was weird, but I got the point. They were trying to tell the emotional like gravitas behind it, and I understand that. I think Ciampa's definitely the one that should have been heel. I've seen Tommaso Ciampa because he's up from my area, my neck of the woods.
Oh, nice.
And he is a very good heel. So I'm glad that he was the one that turned on Gargano. I was a little worried too because the rumors of his knee injury, and I thought the referees were checking him during the match. I was a little worried that was an issue again, and then he almost broke his neck on the ladder, but that's neither here nor there. I think this definitely needed to happen. I think that these two are going to tear the house down at NXT Takeover Brooklyn. The story tells itself. They're going to and I think they were one of the better matches of the first round of the Cruiserweight Classic. So if we get anything remotely close to what we saw at the tournament at Takeover, again, it's a win-win across the board. So it's going to be really interesting to see where things go from there. And I'm curious to see if either one of them goes to 205 Live as well, now.
It could happen eventually, but I'm really happy this is happening now because, number one, we basically get to see the evolution of Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. I think rivalries where people know that there's this personal, real-life element, and now they're trying to sort of blend that in because, they're going to use pictures about the fact that this could even bring up Candice LeRae, like, to NXT. They could storyline figure out a way to get her involved, right? To, like, stop something, but then they make people aware that, no, she's also a wrestler, so she's also going in here. There's so many things that you can pick and choose from that will eventually lead to a better story that doesn't involve a championship. I love the fact that these two guys are either going to get called up or go to 205 Live. I don't know what they're going to end up doing, but they should never become NXT champions because otherwise it will take forever. Right now, the story should be just this. Friend turns on friend, and eventually one goes to Raw, one goes to SmackDown. We almost get the outcome that we wanted to see happen in the draft, where we wanted Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens to go to different brands. Obviously, we know that didn't happen for the time being. It could still happen, but there is a serious element in NXT that would easily get lost in the main roster. Like, compare Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn NXT to Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn in the main roster. In the main roster, it's kind of like, hey, it's a little bit more slapstick. Sami Zayn, he's wacky. But NXT, he was your best friend that was getting his ass handed to him by his former best friend. And you cared about that. And like you mentioned, if we get even 60% of that CWC match that we got into a storyline that is believable. You look at Johnny Gargano's facial expression when, after he was just thrown, he looked up at Ciampa like devastated. His best friend just turned on him, but then Ciampa has his stone cold killer look. That right there sold the story. You didn't need to do anything else, but they got a Billy Mays thing going where it's like, but wait, there's more. I'm going to keep kicking your ass more and more, but wait, there's more. Off the thing till like you were mentioning this to me. For some reason, there's a bunch of tables to the side of the announcer table that they were just there, man. Who likes red tables?
Magic.
Apparently Ciampa does.
Apparently it's just magic. No, and there's two other points to that too. That's actually a very excellent point about the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn comparison. I think that's an excellent comparison to make between that. The difference being, and the big difference being, is that this has been manufactured within NXT. So with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, they told you they had a friendship. They told you they had a history. They didn't really have much of a history in NXT. Literally the same night Kevin Owens debuted, he turned on Sami Zayn. Now, obviously, diehard wrestling fans know the history of Sami Zayn, El Generico, and Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, and the huge, long history with that. But they kind of had to tell that to us. Here, what I thought they did was very clever was they built the storyline for it's been, I mean, a year, right? A year-ish that they've been DIY?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, Cruiserweight Classic last summer, yeah. So, I mean, this is a year-long culmination, so they are naturally letting this happen. Again, simple booking and simple storylines can sell things so much more. You could literally have Ciampa just cut one promo on one NXT show, and that's literally all you need to do to sell the match at Brooklyn. And they can just announce, oh yeah, Ciampa and Gargano are going to face up Brooklyn. And everything is already, the table's already set. Everything is all set and ready to go for this feud. But yeah, like I said, everything's just well done. And there's nothing really to complain about. And, you know, if we get anything remotely close to what we got before, which I guarantee we have, especially if they're going to be facing off against each other, it's going to be great stuff regardless. So.
What was so damn good about this NXT to sort of overall give our impressions is that when you look at WWE pay-per-views, mainstay, we're talking WrestleMania, the Big Four, a lot of people, we talked about this in the podcast extensively, because of the network, storylines don't tend to conclude. They just are either forgotten about or there are shenanigans that happen. But this type of pay-per-view, number one, you get a conclusion because DIY, it's done. That story is over. You look at Bobby Roode, and he put a stop to Hideo Itami. I don't think that Hideo Itami, I'm not sure where he's really going to end up. That's another story that's been his NXT character is, where am I going to end up? Is I guess what you can really say. You look at Ember Moon, where Ember Moon's still out of action, and Asuka is the dominant champion. And at this point, there is basically nobody else because the people that won a battle royal for the opportunity lost. Damn near everybody else in that battle royal has already faced Asuka, so they already lost. So there's nothing there. We got the rematch from the UK tournament with Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne, who battled all over there, and we got a conclusive finish that now it's about the dark days, right? When is that rematch eventually going to happen? And you go all the way back to the beginning where with Roderick Strong, you're establishing the future of NXT. So each of these matches tells you a conclusion, but much like Billy Mays, there's more. All of these bring up specific questions. Like right now, for the next week's NXT, we're probably going to get this information clarified already. I mean, unfortunately, most of the stuff is taped, so we know way before it happens.
Right.
I want to hear what Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa have to say. When you look at Bobby Roode, who the hell is going to face him? You know, guys like Cassius Ohno were left off the card. There's all the rumors about Adam Cole. So you know some theme song is going to come up that either we've never heard before or we just recently heard. You look at the women's thing, I don't know. At this point, I don't know.
That's interesting. No, I mean, and that's an extra. I guess the best way to describe that too is you don't. And this is, I don't want to sound too negative, but I feel like with certain WWE pay-per-views and certain matches on pay-per-views, and this might be a bit of an exaggeration, but you feel almost cheated in the sense of the finish, or like you just get this and then they just roll on, or things, you know, storylines go one way and you get cut off and then other things and just all this craziness. I don't ever feel cheated with a takeover, ever. I don't feel like there are any matches or honestly, I can't recall a takeover where there's been a screwy finish. I just can't off the top of my head think of anyone where you had like some sort of BS shenanigans where you had like a, as they call a dusty finish, where somebody runs in and just screws it. Chaos ensues. I can't think of it. It's a nice, crisp, clean, wrapping that story up with a nice little bow, but leaving it open the door to whatever they do to finish it up there. And so that's kind of the beauty and mystery of NXT, to kind of circle back what we were first talking about. Some people don't watch the weekly NXT shows. I just started to recently, and it does make me appreciate the show even more. But at the same time, it's not 100% necessary. And it's reasons like this, the way it's booked. You could literally not watch NXT again until Brooklyn, which is, I'm assuming, their next takeover, and be well versed in everything that's happened up to then. Because they'll not only recap everything, but they'll drive home like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's just very well written, very well produced, very well booked. That's why I'm always continually be a fan of NXT takeovers.
NXT ultimately treats itself as both a television show and a movie. As a television show, if you watch week to week, you get the little things. You get the little stories that get you pumped up for the takeovers. But if you just watch the takeover, it's like the sequel to the movies. And unlike the thirds that we've talked about, they actually tend to end up being pretty well. Which, speaking of the third, it would be the third Brooklyn. So, oddly enough, that is the road that we're heading off to. But I am so happy that we got this takeover, especially that you and I had this opportunity to finally collaborate, man. I know definitely will not be the last time this happened. If you had any closing thought or comment about somebody that is maybe new to NXT, or maybe you need to sort of push them to like watch the show. If this pay-per-view is in any indication that things are heading off to a right direction, what would you say to that person?
What I would basically say is, if you are a fan of if you are someone who watches or watched wrestling, I should say this: if you watch wrestling and say, "Man, it used to be good," this is the stuff that you could still appreciate to this day. This is the stuff that you could, even if you don't care or watch what's going on in the main roster, if you were ever a fan of pro wrestling for what it was in terms of great action, storytelling, whatever have you, this would be a great reason why. In what many consider to be a crappy time for wrestling, in terms of whether or not you want to talk about like the brand split or any other issues going on as far as what WWE is producing, you can at least take a glimmer of hope that NXT for wrestling fans, both passionate and casual, is a fantastic place to just watch some new up and coming talent that produces great matches and just gets you really pumped up and excited for the world of pro wrestling. Boom, sold it. Money in the bank.
Accidentally said, man. And I will just add one quick thing, and that is that when you look at Raw is almost more is more. They think that 3 hours is not enough. You got to have more people, more roster, more storylines, more weird finishes. SmackDown is a lot better about that, but even then, you're overwhelmed with 5 hours minimum. NXT is 1 hour. This was a little bit over a 2-hour pay-per-view, and it was the exact amount of length. Usually, you look at a pay-per-view card. If you looked at the main roster and you were featured a 5-match pay-per-view card, most of the people will be, what the hell is wrong with that company? They are going to die. NXT shows you, not only will I give you 5 matches, by the second match, you can turn off the TV and feel satisfied with the match variety that you got, and you get some high caliber matches that honestly don't insult your intelligence. Is what I guess the best concluding thought is. It makes you feel smarter.
You get more out of 5 matches than you do 8 or 9 sometimes, and then sometimes less is more.
So hopefully that is the maximum length that the takeovers do stay at. We're going to be having a lot more takeover coverage. I know that you talk about Raw, SmackDown, NXT, talk a little bit about everything on your channel. So do we. We have a podcast that's available every single Wednesday night. We both have Patreon, so you can support the Okayfabe Patreon over at patreon.com/Okayfabe. You can support ours over at Byte. And my suggestion to all of you watching, whether you're from Okayfabe or whether you're from Byte, subscribe. Let's fuse the communities. You know, like I think that in an era where we sort of talked about this a little bit off here, and we talked about it on the podcast, I think that crowdfunding and really community support is the way to go in an era where YouTube is changing a lot, where a lot of things are happening. It really should be from the ground up. So the different communities, let's hang out. Let's not be all negative whether one's better than the other. No, man. You know, each person has different tastes, different preferences, and we ultimately hope to just talk about positive wrestling, right? Like it's really bad when wrestling is bad week to week. It's like, why do I even watch this? But then you get takeovers, and then we get this opportunity to talk, as I usually talk to Ryan and Keith, and you feel rejuvenated, right? Like there's so much good wrestling happening that you can't help but be excited about that. So, gang, if you like this video, give us a huge thumbs up, like, share. We're also available on VidMe, YouTube, SoundCloud. I know you're available elsewhere, sir. Where are you available, Mr. Okayfabe?
I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm on the YouTube, vid.me, just like you guys. I'm also have all my reviews over on, all the major platforms, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, and also Podbean. So you guys can get the audio versions of all that stuff as well, too. The Patreon as well, too. Pretty much we're sharing like the same space, which is kind of cool. So if you guys are on one platform and you're already following one of, if not both of us, there are also these other awesome platforms you can do as well, too. So it's just a win-win across the board. I had a blast. I'm very happy we were able to do this. I know we've been talking about collaboration for a long time, and what better opportunity than an awesome takeover like we got tonight. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody watching. Definitely comment away. Let us know which was your favorite match and your overall impressions of NXT Takeover Chicago, and speculate about what Tommaso Ciampa is going to say on NXT. So until next time, thank you for watching. And until next time, we'll be back with a lot more right here on Byte That and Okayfabe. I can't do you justice, man, but I tried. From 1 out of 10, how would you give me? What would you give me?
4 out of 10, Bret Hart.
It's good enough.
It's okay.